Good.
So anyway, yeah, so I'm here with my sister-in-law Erin, and she is now doing portraits. You might have seen her portraits at Realistic Acrylic Portrait School on the Facebook page. How long have you been painting for, Erin?
Since May.
Yeah, so not too long. Just about a month, month and a half. And she's already done an outstanding job. This is your third portrait,
Yeah.
is that right? So, I mean, look at that. I mean, it's fantastic. I'm just going to do a little critique here. They're out here at my house, and my brother Pete was helping put insulation in the attic, which I really appreciate. He's the one holding the camera, so thank you, Pete. And so anyway, Erin asked if I could look at the painting here and give it a in-person critique. I think she's done an outstanding job. You know, I told her this has a real sense of immediacy, a great sense of visual presence, like he's right there in front of you. And you just really can't capture the nuances, the depth that the glazing technique can achieve on a canvas, you know, via camera. Obviously you're watching this, you know, on a video, but when you're there in person, and you've seen it, you know, when you've done a portrait, it just has so much more immediacy. So it's awesome to be able to appreciate this in person. You know, Erin has a great sense of nuance, of shading and depth. The background allows him to stand out, the subject to stand out really well. She has really excellent contrast in the dark values, and the value key is very harmonious. So she has the dark values, you know, in his wristband, reiterated by the dark values within his hair. The nuances on the face are fantastic, and you know, really good job in the eyes. You know, you did an outstanding job getting that shading in there. The reflections on the pupil, the difference between the shadow being cast from the eyebrow over the upper and lower eyelid fold crease, but then having a highlight on the left-hand side. That's really awesome that you were able to observe that and render it. I mean, it's really well done. And this looks like him. You know, it's a good likeness. Hands are not easy to do. Notoriously, they're very difficult. And I like the way you, you know, just have the fingers resting naturally against his arm, and even the details of the fingernails. That's very well done. The cast shadows are super important in a portrait. The cast shadows really give a sense of the, you know, three-dimensionality of the subject, because they show that his arms actually have physical presence. They're jutting out past his body, and so having that harsh edge on the cast shadows makes a big difference, and you did that very well, Erin. So yeah, I love this. And you know, to improve, you know, I would recommend, and we talked about this before, but just to put in a little more shading under the hairline as you blend in from the hair to the skin tones. With burnt sienna and raw sienna, kind of a more pinkish tone there would really help. A little bit of shading here to show the indentation of the skull right above his nose would help. Some deeper, darker values right between the upper eyelid fold crease and the bottom edge of the eyelid on the top part of his eye. And you can see that in the reference photo. It's just a little bit of a darker value there. And you know, he has, you know, his face is not completely symmetrical. This area here is a little more compressed than the other side. So the distance between the upper and lower eyelid fold is less on the right eye as compared to the left eye. And I think you can accentuate that a bit more and just heighten that.
Just going darker there. Okay.
Yeah, that darker value in there would help. Also, the pupil could be just a bit larger
On the right.
on the right side, because it's receiving less light.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how it's just a bit wider there.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to help too. The blue of his eyes it's just a little too much. You might want to tone it down just a bit with raw umber dark.
Just like a translucent layer of that on there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and maybe a little bit of titanium white mixed in.
Okay.
And then what you'd want to do is go over the left side of that iris, and you see how in the reference photo it's just a little bit darker.
Yeah.
So you'd want to make it just a bit darker on that left-hand side, because then that correlates with the the light being on this side.
Okay.
And generally that's how eyes are. They're like a jewel. It's darker on the, illuminated side, lighter on the side that's not.
Okay.
So if the light source is on the left, typically the iris will be a little darker on that side. So just shade that in a bit there.
Okay.
A little more shading on the top of that eye, and a little lighter on the bottom, but just tone down the blue a little bit.
Sure.
It'll look more naturalistic. And on the rest of his face, we talked about maybe doing a glaze over that and making it have a little more of a pinkish skin tone, but just a bit, because you have a really good sense of luminosity. You don't want to ruin that.
Sure.
But and I would say also you could maybe add just a little bit of a glaze to his neck and just darken that a bit, so that his face stands out more.
Okay. Yeah.
Overall, yeah, really, really good. His, just to be picky, if you're just trying to capture his exact likeness, his lips are a little bit flatter on the top, just a
Okay.
little flatter. And if you were to take like those two little peaks and just spread them out a bit wider, that would capture his likeness a bit more accurately.
Okay.
But yeah, very, very good.
And what do you think about the design on the T-shirt? Because this logo is important to who he is. That's like his business.
Yep.
And so I was thinking I would just sketch in, like with white or yellow pencil first, and then come in and paint on top of that. Is that what you would do, or?
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to do it. Every painting has its own procedure. You have a general process, but you tweak it a little bit depending on the need of the painting. And yeah, if you had sketched this in, it would have been very difficult to paint around it. So I think,
Yeah.
I think doing it after the fact, like I probably would I wouldn't necessarily sketch it. I mean, I would paint it in and then have a damp rag where I could wipe off any marks I didn't like. I would make a few little markings just to get the overall dimension
Yeah.
and
yeah.
paint it in. If you feel more comfortable though, you could sketch it in with a white colored pencil, and then you could seal it in with matte medium, and then once it's sealed in, you can then paint on top of it. So that might be a way of doing it too. Or even kind of has almost off-white color. If you had like
Yeah.
a cream colored pencil, you can buy them. I mean, at Michael's or Hobby Lobby, but yeah, that could also work too. So
Yeah,
there's,
just to get like the general shapes, and then when I'm painting, I can do some more details.
yeah, that would be fantastic if you got that detail in there. That would add a lot to it.
Now, I was struggling with getting this color because it's kind of a purplish blue. Maybe I just don't have the paints that I need, because I only have alizarin crimson. So should I get cadmium red or something like that to make this?
No, cadmium red would look muddy with that.
Okay.
You could use dioxazine purple.
Okay.
I actually have some. I can give you a little bit in a
Just a little.
container. You only
Okay.
need a little bit. It's a strong pigment.
Yeah.
Dioxazine purple would capture that if alizarin crimson hasn't been able to get it for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you did go on top with an alizarin crimson glaze, it would get it close. But if you're really looking to replicate that purple, then dioxazine purple would probably be the way to go. The only thing is if you have this be the only instance of using that pigment, it's not going to have a good color balance throughout. So you might
Okay.
want to then incorporate it into the background
Sure.
with a few glazes, just maybe here and here, a couple of spots, and very, very nuanced, faded in, but just some glazes where you use that pigment, so it's not only used here.
Sure.
You also could use dioxazine purple on your darkest values. It is a darker pigment than black.
Okay.
It's actually darker than ivory black. It's darker than an ultramarine blue, raw umber dark mixed together. So if you really want to heighten the contrast on the painting, and that'll give it more depth. It's just like,
Sure.
a TV that has a high black level
Yeah.
has more depth to it, the picture's better quality. You could then use a glaze of dioxazine purple, put it on the wristband, put it on his hair, because I I mentioned this to you in the when I looked at it on screen from your photo, and I still think these values are not dark enough in his hair.
Sure.
You want to get right inside. You identify those darkest spots, like right here, right next to his face, that little cave under here, you know, and then put deoxys purple mixed with a little bit of ultramarine blue, and put that in those areas. That's going to really heighten the contrast.
Okay.
And if you also put it underneath his arms as well, you know, so you have all these kind of dark values throughout, and any other opportunities like some of the creases here,
Okay.
add a little bit in there. See where it's really dark right there, really dark right here, really dark right there. You want to add that same color in those spots, and that's going to again really heighten the contrast and give it even more of a oomph to it.
Sure.
So
Cool.
yeah, so other than that, I think you're doing super well. I mean, yeah, you might want to add a little bit of a glaze to this lower part of his arm, because you have this part a bit darker. There is a little highlight, but
It's too
overall
highlighted, yeah.
this part of his arm, because it's tilted away, should be a bit darker than the bicep.
Okay.
So I would darken that a bit. I would darken this. This is a nice highlight, but it is a little overdone. It could be toned down a little bit. And then if you could get in some of that hair texture, that would be sweet.
How would you do that? Very small brush?
Well, you can take like a size 3. It doesn't have to be a really small brush, but you want to twist it to a point, get that paint really fluid, spray water on top, mix matte medium with it.
Sure.
And you don't want to try to paint every little hair. You want to look for these little patterns. So you have, you know, these striations, and you try to emulate some triangular striations. See those little shapes? And you just kind of have it blend into your existing shading.
Okay.
And then you can add a few little wispies on top, but the secret is to not use the same color that you're using here up there. It'll be way too dark up there.
Right.
So you're going to want to switch your color, make it a little bit lighter, and just think of it not as being hair color, think of it being as skin tone color. It's just a shade or two darker than what you already have. And when you do that, that's going to really make it blend in. It's going to look fantastic.
And he's also got some
Got some up there, and there it kind of is flowing upwards and kind of fuzzy, but yeah, it's kind of has a little different directional stroke to it, so it's going more that way. But yeah, so if you do those things to it, I would also darken his ear a little. That should have a darker reddish brown color.
Yep.
I think it's going to be really good. Lastly, his nose, that shadow on the left side is a little too dark. I'd lighten that up a bit.
Sure.
Because the lighting is more on the left side. And yeah, so
All right.
there you go.
Well, thank you.
Fantastic. So Aaron's portrait, just outstanding job, Aaron. Really proud of what you've done in just a short amount of time.
Well, thanks. You've been really good at teaching me, and you know, I just love the process of just watching you do it. That's the most important way to learn, I think, because then I'm seeing how you're loading it on your paint, how you're mixing the paint, you know, and what color you end up with. Even if I don't have the same exact color, you know, it's like you talk about, is always the value.
Yeah.
That's more important.
More important. You bet.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you.
You're very welcome. So thanks guys for watching, and keep encouraging each other. Erin has encouraged many of the artists in the group, and thank you for encouraging her and helping her. And that's it for now. God bless you guys. See you soon.
Bye.